Welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Today, we are going to discuss the Hindu newspaper dated 8th October 2018 of the New Delhi edition. The news to be discussed has been presented on the screen, and the time stamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. Let's start our today's discussion. The first news appears on page number 1. The news reads, "For Kumbh, Ganga gets a Swachh Army. Task force of ex-servicemen will help in crowd management and also help in keeping the river clean." In your prelims examination, this topic forms a part of general issues on environmental ecology, biodiversity, as well as climate change. Whereas in the main section, it forms a part of GS3 primarily, but also gets covered under GS paper 2, specifically with respect to a new bill which has created a Ganga Action Task Force. So in this aspect, let us understand the basics of this particular news. So in this news, the Kumbh Mela of 2019 will see participation of the Ganga Task Force, whose personnel will be specially trained by the Ministry of Defence. So these people who forms a part of Ganga Task Force shall be specially trained by Ministry of Defence. The Ganga Task Force will help with crowd management, spread awareness on keeping the river clean, and prevent people as well as industry to pollute the river. So we see that the members of Ganga Task Force, who shall be specially trained by Ministry of Defence, will help with crowd management, spread awareness on keeping the river clean, and also prevent people as well as industry from polluting the river Ganga. Now in this respect, it becomes important to know about Ganga Task Force. Now Ganga Task Force is a unit of territorial army deployed on the approval of Ministry of Defence. Their functions in the upcoming Kumbh Mela will include planting trees to check soil erosion, patrolling sensitive river areas for the protection of its biodiversity, patrolling ghats, monitoring river pollution, and providing assistance during flood or any natural calamity. And in this respect, it's also important to know that the Jawans of GTF, that is Ganga Task Force, have also been trained by Central Pollution Control Board, that is CPCB. So all these aspects with respect to Ganga Task Force becomes important to know from a prelims point of view. In this respect, it's important to note that Ganga Task Force was created through an executive order of the government in 2015. However, the task force then did not have a defined mandate. Thus, it is in this respect that the government has come up with a new bill which creates a National Ganga Council and also a National Ganga Rejuvenation Authority to enforce the law with respect to cleanliness of Ganga and also to ensure its steady flow. The bill also creates an Armed Ganga Protection Corps, and its personnel will have power to arrest those who pollute the river. The personnel of Armed Ganga Protection Corps will be provided by the Ministry of Home Affairs, and the personnel will be deployed by the National Ganga Rejuvenation Authority. So the personnel of Armed Ganga Protection Corps will be provided by Ministry of Home Affairs and will be deployed by the National Ganga Rejuvenation Authority. The new bill have banned a list of activities which pollutes the river, and these offences have been made a cognizable offence. These banned activities includes construction activities causing obstruction in the river, withdrawal of groundwater for industrial or commercial consumption, and especially from those areas which are adjacent to a river or a tributary. The bill has also banned commercial fishing or aquaculture, discharging untreated sewage into river, and residential, commercial or industrial activity by person or municipality which may result in discharge of sewage. So all these activities have been banned as well as prohibited by the new bill, which aims to prevent pollution of the river Ganga. It is also important to note that the National Mission for Clean Ganga runs the Namami Gange mission to clean the river Ganga. And National Mission for Clean Ganga is thrusting on inclusion of private sector to not only set up sewage treatment plant but also to maintain such plants of sewage treatment. Thus, all these aspects with respect to this particular news on Ganga gets a Swachh Army for the next Kumbh Mela becomes extremely crucial to understand from our exam point of view. With this, let's move on to the next news. The next news appears on page number 8 in the editorial section. The news reads, "Oldest Friends. India needs to stand firm on its deep engagement with Russia in the coming months." Now in this respect, India and Russia on the visit of Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a number of agreements, and India and Russia have also issued a joint statement on various issues. Now, India and Russia have issued a joint statement on different areas such as economy, science and technology, energy, military technical cooperation, and on international issues. Thus, this editorial in your prelim section forms a part of current events of international importance and your GS paper 2 under international relations. Thus, effectively this editorial highlights the agreement signed between India and Russia. It also highlights the addressing of summits by both Prime Minister of India as well as the President of Russia, where they also talked about increasing their bilateral trade, which currently is below $10 billion. Focus of India-Russia ties, especially in the energy sector, ability of India to sign defense deals with Russia despite threat from United States, and this threat is basically in the form of CATSA law, that is countering American adversaries through Sanctions Act. And finally, the editorial highlights the contemporary realities with respect to ongoing geopolitical compulsions. So in this aspect, let us first go through some of the agreements signed between India and Russia. Primarily among them is the S-400 Triumph missile system deal. As you can see, these are the list of agreements or MOUs exchanged between India and Russia during the visit of President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. First, protocol for consultations between Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of External Affairs. Second, MOU between Ministry of Economic Development of the Russian Federation and our Niti Aayog. Third, MOU between ISRO, that is Indian Space Research Organization, and Federal Space Agency of Russia on joint activities in the field of human spaceflight program, where India intends to go into a space cooperation arrangement to put an Indian in space. Further, memorandum of cooperation between Indian and Russian railways. Then, action plan for prioritization and implementation of cooperation areas in the nuclear field. MOU between Russian Ministry of Transport and Indian Railways in the development cooperation in transport education. MOU between National Small Industries Corporation of India and the Russian Small and Medium Business Corporation on cooperation in the field of micro, small and medium enterprises. Now this is an important MOUs between the micro, small and medium enterprises of both India and Russia. Further, cooperation agreement in fertilizer sectors between Russian Direct Investment Fund as well as Indian Potash Limited. So these are some of the list of agreements exchanged between India and Russia during the visit of President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. Going further, this editorial highlights certain contemporary realities with respect to geopolitical compulsions, and it is here where India has to take certain tough decisions with respect to its relation between US, Russia and even Iran. The editorial says that New Delhi's assertion of strategic autonomy and desire for multipolarity will be seriously tested in the coming months. The reasons provided by this editorial is, first, the editorial says that India chose to sign a deal on S-400 but resisted concluding other major defense deals with Russia on helicopters, stealth frigates as well as assault rifles. The second point highlighted by the editorial is that more defense deal with Russia will make it difficult for USA to give India a waiver specifically from sanctions under CATSA law, as CATSA's law's primary aim is to limit or curtail defense and energy dealings, especially with Russia, Iran as well as North Korea. So in this aspect, more defense deals with Russia in coming days will become a problem for India, specifically with respect to this CATSA law. Thirdly, United States has made it clear that any waiver from its side shall be based on transaction basis and not on country basis. So effectively, the United States wants to see what sort of transaction a particular country is entering into with either Russia, Iran or North Korea. So in this respect, accepting a waiver from US will implicitly commit India to reduce its intake of Russian military hardware. Or in other words, it means less defense deals with Russia on various defense hardware. So in this respect, the editorial highlights that India needs to make some tough decisions with respect to CATSA law, and especially for seeking a waiver in this aspect, on US proposed sanctions on Iran, and on choosing partners for trade including defense and energy with United States, Iran, as well as Russia. So it is here where India needs to be very careful and take certain tough decisions. Thus, this editorial on India and Russia, where both issued joint statements and also signed number of agreements, becomes extremely crucial from our exam perspective. Now, this particular question was asked recently in the 2018 mains in GS paper 2. It said, in what ways would the ongoing US-Iran nuclear pact controversy affect the national interest of India? How should India respond to this situation? So we understand the ongoing global conflict, specifically with respect to United States, Iran and Russia having its impact on India, are being asked by UPSC. So in this aspect, this particular editorial becomes extremely important. With this, let's move on to the next news. The next news appears on page number 8 in the article section. It reads, Shifting the Burden of Shame. In this particular news, the article highlights that by choosing Nobel Peace Prize in 2018 for Denis Mukwege and Nadia Murad, the Nobel Committee has empowered the narrative against sexual crimes. Nobel Peace Prize for 2018 in your prelims examination forms a part of current events of international importance, and in your mains paper it gets covered under GS paper 2, specifically with respect to vulnerable sections of the society. So this article effectively highlights about survivors of sexual crimes and how women are treated when they are captured. The Nobel Peace Prize for 2018 has been awarded to Congolese gynecologist Dr. Denis Mukwege and Yazidi human rights activist Nadia Murad for their efforts to end use of sexual violence as a weapon of war and armed conflict. It says that both laureates have made a crucial contribution to focusing attention on combating war crimes. Denis Mukwege is a helper who has devoted his life to defending these victims, whereas Nadia Murad is a witness who tells the abuses perpetrated against herself and others. And each of them in their own way has helped to give greater visibility to wartime sexual offense so that perpetrators can be held accountable for their actions. So in this respect, let us go through the highlights of this particular article, which highlights that Nobel Committee, after choosing Denis Mukwege and Nadia Murad, has empowered the narrative against sexual crimes. Denis Mukwege is the helper who devoted his entire life to defend victims of war crimes. He has been an outspoken activist calling for an end to using women's body as weapons of war. Whereas Nadia Murad tells of the abuses perpetrated against her as well as others by the IAS. Thus, this article mentions about the sufferings, both physical as well as mental, that Nadia Murad went through as a sex slave of IS fighters. Now, it's important to note that Nadia Murad belongs to the Yazidi community, and members of the community have been persecuted several times in history by Ottomans as well as Saddam Hussein's Baathists, because Yazidis were considered as non-believers. Nadia Murad, in her book The Last Girl, describes abject cruelty and complete violation which IS inflicted on their sex slaves. She also mentions about their efficient bureaucracy that was set up in order to reward their fighters with access to women's bodies. Thus, through her book, she has tried to highlight the disturbing conditions which a slave went through. She recounted her experience with great courage and in great detail all along the way to the United Nations, where she highlighted not only her plight but that of all the girls who unfortunately had to go through this shameful and unfortunate experience in their lives. In her book, she has also highlighted how the trading of slaves took place. Thus, the United Nations, by recognizing her effort, has helped in bringing the issue of survivors of war crimes and sex slaves in the mainstream public discourse, as it will allow greater visibility to the sexual violence during the wartime, the offenders involved in such sexual crimes, as well as the victims who are the sufferers of the sexual violence. And all this will help in making the perpetrators of sexual violence accountable for their actions. Hence, in this aspect, it's a very important article to understand the issue of survivors of war crimes and the physical and mental harassment which these victims go through. From an Indian perspective, it's important to note that the Lok Sabha has recently passed the Trafficking of Persons Prevention, Protection and Rehabilitation Bill 2018, The bill addresses the issue of aggravated form of trafficking, namely trafficking for the purpose of forced labor or begging, trafficking by administering chemical substance or hormones on a person for the purpose of early sexual maturity, trafficking of a woman or child for the purpose of marriage or under the pretext of marriage or after marriage. Thus, the trafficking bill lays down a stringent punishment of 10 years to life imprisonment for aggravated forms of trafficking, and these aggravated forms of trafficking includes buying or selling of persons for the purpose of bonded labor or bearing a child, and where chemical substance or hormones are administered and a survivor acquires life-threatening illness such as AIDS. Thus, in this aspect, the bill also provides for a National Anti-Trafficking Bureau, which will perform the following functions. It will coordinate and monitor surveillance and preventing efforts along with the known or probable routes of trafficking. It will increase international coordination with authorities in foreign countries and international organizations. It will facilitate surveillance, enforcement, and preventive steps at source, transit, and destination points of trafficking. So, these are the three most important aspects with respect to prevention of trafficking. That is, preventing trafficking at source, transit, that is when it is transferred from one place to another, as well as destination points. Further, to maintain coordination between various law enforcement agencies and non-governmental organizations and other stakeholders. And in this aspect, the bill also provides for a anti-trafficking relief and rehabilitation committee at the national, state, as well as district level. So all these becomes important point with respect to the National Anti-Trafficking Bureau as well as Anti-Trafficking Relief and Rehabilitation Committee. Thus, this particular bill, specifically with respect to prevention, protection and rehabilitation of victims of trafficking, becomes extremely crucial to understand from the pretext of Nobel Peace Prize given in the year 2018. Now, with respect to safety of women, this question was asked in the year 2017 in your GS paper 2. The question read, is the National Commission for Women able to strategize and tackle the problems that women face both at public and private spheres? Give reasons in support of your answers. So we see these type of questions with respect to women's safety becomes extremely important. Hence, this particular article, which highlights the fact that Nobel Committee has empowered the narrative against sexual crimes by giving the Peace Prize to Denis Mukwege and Nadia Murad, becomes extremely significant from an exam perspective. With this, let's move on to the next news. The next news appears on page number 7. The news reads, upgraded MiG-29 adds to air power. The fighter plane now has the capability to take off vertically, giving a shot in the arm of the IAF, that is Indian Air Force. In your prelims examination, this topic gets covered under General Science. This particular news highlights that the upgraded MiG-29 showcased its combat capabilities at Adampur Air Force Station, which is near Jalandhar. So the strategically important Adampur Air Force Station, which is around 100 km from Pakistan and 250 km away from China borders, is now equipped with an upgraded MiG-29. The upgraded features in the MiG-29 are, now it comes with a mid-air refueling capacity which increases its range, and with this they can also cover larger distance. Next upgrade is that it has the ability to launch latest missiles and multi-dimensional attacks. Next, it has the capability to take off vertically. Now with respect to the upgraded MiG, takeoff is possible within 5 minutes of spotting a hostile jet, that is an enemy aircraft. So it can take off within 5 minutes of spotting a enemy aircraft. And next, glass cockpit with multifunctional display screens. So all these are upgraded advantages with respect to MiG-29. In this aspect, let us go through some of the background with respect to MiG aircrafts. It says that the Indian Air Force placed an order of more than 50 MiG-29s in the 1980 while the aircraft was still in its developmental phase. So the first order was placed in the 1980, and since its induction into the Indian Air Force in 1985, the aircraft has undergone a series of modifications, and Indian MiG-29s were used extensively during the 99 Kargil War in Kashmir by the Indian Air Force, where it provided fighter escort for Mirage 2000, attacking targets with laser guided bombs. So this is the background with respect to MiG-29 fighter jet in India. And in this respect, it's important to note that 8th October is celebrated as Air Force Day. And today, that is on 8th October 2018, the Air Force will celebrate its 86th anniversary. So this upgradation with respect to MiG-29s becomes extremely crucial, as certain questions may be framed with respect to some of the upgraded functions of MiG-29s, which are mid-air refueling facility, ability to launch latest missiles and multi-dimensional attacks, capability to take off vertically, spotting a hostile jet within 5 minutes, and a multifunctional display glass cockpit. With this, let's move on to the next news. The next news appears on page number 14. A flower awaits its place under the sun. A kg of Gloriosa Superba cost rupees 3,420. This topic in your prelims examination get covered under general issues on environmental ecology, biodiversity as well as climate change. So in this particular news, in the drought affected areas of Tamil Nadu, this flower, that is Gloriosa Superba, can help in increasing farmers' income. As you can read, a kg of this flower cost rupees 3,420. And this flower also has certain unique medicinal properties. So let us understand certain basic facts about Gloriosa Superba. It says it is the state flower of Tamil Nadu. Now this becomes a very important and significant information from your prelims point of view, as similar questions have been asked by UPSC in the past. It further says that the common names include flame lily, climbing lily, creeping lily, glory lily, etc. And it contains 24 types of alkaloids, that is nitrogenous organic compounds, and 10 non-alkaloidal medicinal compounds. And it is widely used in the native medicinal compositions and the treatment of gout as a painkiller in allopathic medicine. Now this again becomes important with respect to treatment of gout as a painkiller. However, there are certain problems with respect to cultivation of this Gloriosa Superba. It says that a major problem in the cultivation of this species is the pollination of this particular flower. It says the peculiar structure of the flower impedes pollination rate. So one of the major problem is with respect to its pollination. And secondly, it says the other problem is the high cost of raising the plant. So these are some of the problems with respect to cultivation of Gloriosa Superba. Now, as I mentioned, a similar question was asked in the year 2016. Let's go through the question. The question asked was, recently for the first time in our country, which of the following states has declared a particular butterfly as a state butterfly? Options were Arunachal Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, Karnataka and Maharashtra. In this, the correct answer is D, that is Maharashtra. So we see a state butterfly has been asked, hence in this aspect, the state flower of Tamil Nadu becomes extremely important for us to understand, and also because of the fact that it sells quite costly in the market and it also has medicinal properties. Hence in this aspect, this flower becomes extremely crucial from a prelims perspective, that is Gloriosa Superba. With this, let's move on to the next news. The next news appears on page number 14. The news reads, Black Gold Still Rules. It says that oil continues to be the top source for energy as renewables have remained stagnant. So highlight of this particular article is that oil continues to be the top source for energy. And the next important thing which this news highlights is that renewable energy has remained constant. It further says that the pecking order with respect to producing as well as consumption among nations is changing. For example, the US has emerged as a major producer over the past decade. So the change in the pecking order is that the United States has emerged as a major producer over the past decade. It further says that the share of renewables as an energy source had a feeble increase in the past few years. While the dependence on oil has come down, coal and natural gas have both seen a rise. As you can see in this particular diagram, where with respect to primary and secondary oil, that its percentage as a share of energy source has come down. With respect to coal, it initially came down but again rose. With respect to natural gas, it's a slight increase from what it was in the 1990s. With respect to renewables, it remained almost stagnant, got a dip but again saw a slight increment. With respect to nuclear energy, we can see certain dip with respect to its percentage share of energy source. Now this particular diagram talks about proven reserves with respect to oil. It says worldwide proven oil reserves have risen by 46% in the past decade. It says until 1997, the West Asia led by a huge margin in proven reserves but has reached a plateau, whereas North, Central and South America have caught up since the turn of the millennium. As you can see in this diagram, blue color represents oil reserves by 1997, red color represents oil reserves from 1997 to 2007 and yellow represents oil reserves from 2007 to 2017. So we see for North America we have blue as well as red, that is it is more from 1997 to 2007, whereas for South and Central America it has more in the yellow color, that is its oil reserves have increased from 2007 to 2017, whereas for West Asia it was huge in the blue color, that is its oil reserves were quite large till 1997 but it has reduced significantly thereafter. In case of Africa, its oil reserves have also reduced as compared to the early 1997. And similar is the story with respect to Asia Pacific. So this diagram represents the oil reserves with respect to different regions of the world. This diagram represents the power shift as discussed above. It says that the period between 2000 and 2017 saw a big shift in both production and consumption pattern for oil. Graphs show the percentage share of oil production and consumption for the top 15 countries over the years. Each circle indicates a particular country. So it says that in 2007, US produced only 8.4% of the world oil, while Saudi produced 12.7% and Russia produced 12.4%, and these were the world leaders, that is Russia and Saudi Arab were the world leaders in terms of oil production. Now by the year 2013, China raised its share of oil production to 4.9%, and by that it became the fourth biggest producer by 2013. But in 2015, Iran, Canada and Iraq surpassed China, and also the United States was catching up fast with respect to oil production. So by 2018, the shift was complete, and now about 14.3% was produced in the United States, whereas Saudi and Russia shares stayed almost stagnant. So by the year 2018, US started producing approx 14.3% of total world oil production, whereas the production for Saudi and Russia stagnated almost at around 12.5%. Now this data was with respect to percentage share of oil for production. This particular data is with respect to percentage share of oil in terms of consumption. It says in 2007, US led the world consumption by 25% of the oil. India for long was the fourth biggest consumer behind Japan, but in 2017 it became the third biggest consumer and consumed roughly 5% of the world oil. So now the United States has reduced its consumption, whereas China has increased its consumption. So in this particular news, we saw percentage share of oil production as well as percentage share of oil consumption, and the article highlighted that black gold still rules. Now recently, a question was asked in the year 2018 in your GS paper 3. The question read, access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy is the sine qua non to achieve sustainable development goals. Comment on the progress made in India in this regard. So in this aspect, we understand that energy requirements becomes extremely important also because of the fact that India has now become the third largest consumer of global oil. So in this aspect, it's time that India should look forward to alternate sources of energy. And it was because of this particular question was asked in the year 2018 mains. So these diagrams becomes extremely important from an exam perspective. With this, we come to an end to discussion of today's newspaper. Let's move on to the question for the day.